Hi, it's John Kelly. In this module, we are going to discuss audit reports, particularly unmodified audit reports. And as always, we want to be efficient and effective, follow professional standards, and document what we have done properly. Now we're going to talk about the standard form of the auditor's report. And it's simple-ish. Got to be careful, of course, but it's simple. Certainly more complicated if we're going to have a modified audit report. And there is an example of the standard unmodified audit report in the appendix to 700. And 710 through 15 list a series of matters the auditor is to consider and conclude upon before issuing the audit report, and presumably then to document, and a checklist will be helpful here to remind the auditor of all the things that are in those sections. And as I said, the audit report is normally unmodified, better word actually than unqualified. Unmodified is the sort of more modern term. The form of the standard audit report, it's titled the Independent Auditor's Report. It is addressed normally to the shareholders, and then there's a standard form of report. There's then a signature, a date, and dating is complicated, and I have a module on that. And the auditor's address, normally just the city address. So you would list the city and the country in which the auditor was in. Now, the one thing that I guess you have to watch in the audit report is typos. And grammar aside, the new rule is it's the Independent Auditor '(S) report. Before this section came out, we would write Auditor S' if it was a firm of auditors, because I guess that's grammatically correct. And we would only go Auditor '(S) if it was a sole practitioner. And the standard setters, and don't ask me why, have decided that we're all Auditor '(S's) now. So I don't care. The correct answer is Auditor '(S) in all reports. So that's something to check in all reports to make sure that we've got that done correctly. The other typo we can get is if we're giving either a 1-year or a 2-year opinion. And when we're giving a 2-year opinion, the auditor's opinion extends to 2 years, and it has to be very clear that it does that. This is typically for public companies, and the regulators are particularly picky to make sure that the auditor references both years. Now, the standard setters around the world are pretty clear that we pluralize the names. So in a 1-year balance sheet, or a 1-year audit opinion, in the first paragraph we would talk about the balance sheet. We have audited the balance sheet. And in a 2-year report, the standard setters at least are clear that we would say we have audited the balance sheets, plural. And presumably then in the financial statements, the balance sheet would not say the balance sheet, it would say the balance sheets. And the same thing for the income statement would become the income statements, and so on. Though I find when I look at what happens in published public company financial statements, there are almost as many combinations as you can imagine. Many times the auditor will pluralize balance sheets, but when you look at the balance sheet, the client has not. It's just balance sheet. So some of the times the auditors pluralize, and so does the client. Some of the times the auditor pluralizes and the client does not. And some of the time the auditor doesn't have the extra S, and neither does the client. And I guess the position is, if you say, we have audited the balance sheet as at December 31st this year and as at December 31st last year, you're referencing them both without the S. So while standard setters are clear on the S, practice diverges as widely as you can imagine. Now you will of course refer to the years, so we have examined the balance sheet or audited the balance sheet as at December 31st X2, and in the 2 years you will say as at December 31st X2 and X1. And then you will have to pluralize the year. So we say, and for the year then ended. We will say, and for the years then ended. And on the statements as well, though again there's some divergence in practice, because if you say, and for the year ended December 31st 2 and December 31st 1, I guess it says it without the S. The one thing that you sort of have no choice in, and when I took a look at some published financial statements, adding the S in the responsibility paragraph, we say the work done based on our audit. We have to say based on our audits, plural, because we've had 2 audits this year and last year, and we conducted our audits, and that becomes we conducted our audits, plural. And the auditors who had not put an S on the balance sheet all put S's there. The other phrase that's added, and this you got to be careful about, if you're just doing a 1-year audit, you say the evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate. And in a 2-year audit, you say the evidence we have obtained in our audits is sufficient and appropriate. And that, again, everybody did. And then you have to reference 2 years in the opinion for, we think the balance sheet as of December 31st is fairly presented. And in a 2-year opinion, you'd say 2002 and 2001 are fairly presented. So just double check that. I see people that mix the 1-year and 2-year. They have some S's on based on our audits, or they have in our audits in a 1-year opinion. So just double check that you've got that lined up correctly. It's kind of embarrassing if you have a typo in the audit report, because it's our only product that the client sees. We've done a brilliant, brilliant audit, and then we have a typo in the audit report, and it just makes us look foolish. Now, if you want rather too many examples, there's the URL, and this is for Canadian audits. These are examples produced in Canada, but they will apply throughout the world. 12th edition in April 2004, 252 pages of discussing how you write audit reports and how you write 2-year audit reports and how you do qualifications to audit reports. So it's rather a daunting document, but boy, it contains just about every possible example you could need. Now, other modifications are complex. Modifications to the standard audit report are complex, and emphasis of matter and other matter paragraphs are complex, but I will have other modules on those 2 topics. So, thanks for listening.